Well, welcome everybody to Home Run. This is lecture number 2. We have a couple of new students who will be joining us today. Where's Jeff? Oh, he was on. There he is. And I think Leah's going to join us too, right, Jeff? Yeah. All right. And maybe you text her, Jeff, and so she gets on so that she doesn't miss anything. So there's Leah. She's coming in now, and hopefully Karina's joining us too. So what we've done in lecture 1, I won't obviously repeat it, but what we tried to do is to get us going and get us started to understand what it is like to be a developer, a serious developer. All right. We all know something about real estate investing. I get that. By now, you should understand.
See, I'm like this.
Karina, I'm going to mute you. You all understand there's a big leap between being a real estate investor, which is difficult enough, and being a developer. And you've heard me make this joke a number of times that the 4 quickest ways to get poor: number 1, get divorced. Number 2, buy a horse ranch. Number 3, buy an NHL team, which I did. And number 4, I added to the list fairly recently, was become a land developer. And what I'm trying to teach you is a sophisticated level of understanding, which is kind of a 3rd and 4th year university level understanding of what it is like to be a professional land developer and also not go broke. All right. Land development can be a wonderful business. Michael's here from BC. He's going to build, I don't know, something like 800 units on Vancouver Island. We've got other people, Jake and Paula, doing quite a number of units from scratch. So we do have people who are already developers, but we're going to take them from one level to the next level. And we're going to take some people who are obviously successful investors and make them real estate developers. But it's a lot of work, and you've got a lot of emails from me. So dig in and try and finish the course strong. It's 4 months long, so that's quite a long time. And there will be a final exam, Jeff, at the end of this, and which you have to get 75% on to pass. And then you get actually a certificate from me, but I'm sure you'll have no problem doing that. Hello, Dave. All right. So what I'm going to start with is something that you probably all have figured out by now, except for Leah and Jeff, and that is that part of the education that you're getting from me it is through the emails that I share with you. All right. So you should, I know my emails sometimes can be a bit long, and you're all busy. I'm busy, you're busy, and you may not want to read them through, but I'm asking you to try, because it's a big part of the education process. I might send you 1 email a day, or if I'm being good, I'll send you 1 email every 2 days, but it's part of the education process. And I know some of you are reading them because I'm getting lots of feedback from about half the class, but from the other half the class, crickets. All right. So I'd ask you to read them, and it's a big part of what we're doing, and also to communicate back with me. I hope everybody has, I'm sure everybody does, but just in case you don't, I'm going to put in the chat box one more time my cell number. I think I have everybody's cell number, so you'll have mine. And if you don't have it, take it down. And I ask people not to call me very often, unless the house is burning down. It's an emergency, call me. All right. If there's something I can really help you with, and it's it's truly urgent, you call me. But I have about 2,500 clients between my coaching practice and my realtor practice. So if everybody called me once a day, I'd never get any work done. But you can text me. I can handle about 120 emails and texts a day, but it would be very difficult to do 120 phone calls. But you have it just in case you need it. All right. So this is something that I wanted to talk a little bit about just to begin with. It's not the main subject for today, but it's an important subject. How do you actually get projects approved? And I just wrote down 7 things. I just did that this morning, 7 things that I've been doing since the 1980s. So that tells you a long time now. And the first thing on my list is I help get the right mayor and councilors elected. I do. And I give them something more valuable than money. I give them ideas and policies and arguments that help get them elected. That's more valuable to them than if I gave them $500 or whatever the legal maximum is in your city or your town or your state or your province. So one of the things that I think you guys will get from this course, and maybe you already have, and certainly if you do the readings that I'm providing you, is you'll learn a lot about not just, you know, how to make a single project successful, but also how to make your whole neighborhood successful, and how to make your whole town successful, how to make your whole city successful. And I don't have to tell you guys, I'm sure you all know this, if your city is more successful, your properties will be more valuable without you having to do anything other than maybe perhaps helping your local mayor or your local councilors do a better job. And I do that, but I do it privately. So I tend, if I have a project that I'm going to do, I'm doing a couple in a small town called Belleville, Ontario. I will go and brief the local councilor or councilors and the mayor before I almost do anything else. So if I bought a property, within a few days, usually I'm in the mayor's office, hey, mayor, I bought something in your town and this is what I'm planning to do. I just wanted you to know. Politicians, whether it's a local councilor or a mayor, and for that matter, a state governor or a provincial premier, they hate being surprised. They don't want to read about your project in you know, in the local press, and somebody sticks a microphone in front of them and says, what do you think about Firestone's latest project? That you don't want to happen, right? So that's what I do. And for example, when I was trying to build the Palladium, which is now Canadian Tire Center, a 20,000 seat arena, I briefed the mayor almost within days of acquiring the 600-acre site where we eventually did build the building. And I asked him to keep it confidential until we made a public announcement, and he did. I didn't ask him to sign an NDA, and for those of you who know me well, you know I don't like NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. Why is that? Because if you trust somebody, you don't need an NDA. And if you don't trust them, if they sign an NDA, it won't do you any good, right? Because they have no intention of adhering to any kind of an agreement. So only deal with people you trust. The other thing I do is I talk to my neighbors and I talk to the local planners, the municipal planners, right? These are called in many cities and towns pre-consultations, and they're worth their weight in gold. So before I go and talk to the city planners, I will talk to my neighbors. I'll go and knock on a door. I'll go by on a Sunday afternoon in nice weather and walk around and say, hey, I just bought a property not far from you. My name's Bruce Firestone. What's your name? And I'm quite a friendly guy, and it really helps because a lot of people think developers, you know, have horns and a tail and fangs and, you know, eat babies for breakfast. Well, we don't. And you may have already heard from me before that the word landlord should go out of fashion. We should not be using the word landlord under any circumstance. We're now rental providers. Landlord is like a swear word, and rental provider is not, okay? So we're all rental providers, or we're whatever, but we're not landlords. So you talk to your neighbors, and then you do your pre-consultation with your local planners, and they'll bring together a whole group of them: transportation, environment, conservation authority, municipal planners, zoning people, and it's really very valuable. In some cities, they do it for free. In where I live in Ottawa, Ontario, they charge you $500, and $500 very well spent. And so what I try and do is when I get to a planning committee, or I go in front of another committee for a rezoning or a severance or a committee of adjustment, minor variance, I try and wrap all of my projects in a bow. In other words, I've talked to the neighbors, the community associations, the local business improvement areas, chambers of commerce, et cetera, and I've tried to get them on side. Again, nothing politicians hate worse than going to a meeting where they're going to have to vote up or down on your project, and there's 500 people in a room all yelling at them and at you, the developer, okay? So you try and diffuse that as best you can. There's some things that you can do to make it a little easier. For example, when I'm going into a public meeting where I know I'm going to have opposition, I often will stack that meeting. What does that mean? I'll get some big, tough, strong union guys in t-shirts saying, I want the Palladium, or I want this building, because in my area, most construction in commercial construction is unionized. So I'll get 20 union members to come and show up at big guys. It's very intimidating. So I don't let my opponents, if I have any, stack the meeting with their people all booing and hissing. I stack the meeting with some supporters. So supporters from the Chamber of Commerce, supporters from a union, if it's a union construction job, and that sort of thing. So it's really good to have people on your side. It's psychologically very difficult. You know, I have done meetings where I've had 400 or 500 angry people yelling at me, and that's hard to talk uphill against that, right? So I try not to do that or avoid that. I do my own presentations. A lot of developers will hire a lawyer, a planner, a private planner, somebody else to be their spokesperson. I think that is a terrible idea in general. It might be a good idea if you have a bad temper. All right. So one of the things that won't get you very far is yelling at people. At least that's my experience. So if you have a bad temper, maybe you do need somebody else to speak for you. But I'll tell you something, I get almost all of my projects approved. I think I've had one failure in 40 years. I've done hundreds of projects, but I know I've had one fail and get turned down. But that's still a pretty good track record. But I do my own presentations. I prepare my own slide decks. They're not very fancy, but they work. And the reason I do my own presentations is, again, I want to show that not every developer has fangs and horns and a tail. And it's harder for people to hate you if you stand up and you speak to them, whether it's a counselor or a mayor or committee of adjustment, which is, you know, a committee of your peers, or in fact, just neighbors who don't perhaps like the project, right? So I do my own presentations. And one of the things that has really helped is having some kind of a social media profile. You know, I'm very active on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Oh, I have a few YouTube. I've got hundreds of videos on YouTube. And I'm trying to learn TikTok. My youngest daughter is teaching me. She's very successful on TikTok. She releases TikTok videos for her fashion design business, which is very successful, and she gets like 500,000 views. I certainly don't get those kind of numbers, but she's teaching me TikTok. So social allows us to explain ourselves directly to the public and sort of evens up the playing field between us and mainstream media, right? Mainstream media tends to follow one parameter, and that is they comfort the afflicted and they afflict the comfortable. If you understand what that means, it means that they perceive every developer as a rich son of a gun, you know, SOB, and so they're coming for you. And they'll seize on things and, you know, blow it all out of proportion. You know, we need a good, strong media. I understand that for a strong democracy, but at the same time, they are also busy and they tend to take shortcuts and they don't really understand the development business, and they can make mincemeat of us. But if you go after them on social, they back off. I'm telling you. So there you go. Now, I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed, and I won't mention disappointed in whom, but one of the things I did this week was I briefed a candidate. So the city of Ottawa has an election coming up. In fact, all of Ontario has a municipal election coming up in October of this year. And one of the things I do is, as I said, is I try and help candidates for mayor and candidates that I support for mayor and candidates that I support for councillor get elected. So I give them briefings, which it seems to be very helpful. And I did one this week, and I sent you guys an email when you can see it went here, and I won't go into that detail. So what I did was I did a confidential briefing. It was about an hour long for a candidate on an open council seat, a candidate that I support. And when I sent you an email, the email said, if you would like to view the video, you can, but you just have to respond to me that you'll keep it confidential. Because this kind of work that we do as developers, a lot of it is best kept confidential. So I'm willing to share it with you guys, but you have to actually email me saying, yes, I'll keep it confidential, all right? And I'll just give you an example of why I think that is so important, all right? When I started out in the development business, I was in my 20s. I think I was 28. And I worked for the government of Canada, and I didn't really like it. You know, government work, they paid very well, and there were good benefits, all of that, which was great. But the work wasn't that interesting. And I was a young man. I had a young family then. My wife and I had one kid. We now have five, but back then it was just one. So I needed a job like anybody else. And I took a job as a young engineer working for the government of Canada. But really on the first afternoon of my first day on the job, I thought, this probably isn't for me. And the reason I left the government, and it took me 3.5 years to decide to leave. And I worked for great people, and there was great benefits, as I said, and I enjoyed like I said, the people I worked with were great. But the work itself was not that interesting. Really, you didn't have much control on the output. And, God or Mother Nature, whatever you prefer, gave us these big brains and these dexterous fingers and these opposable thumbs. And the real reason that most people become entrepreneurs, they often say, well, it was to make more money, or I think that was my email. I'm going to turn that off. Sorry about that, you guys. Yeah. Thank you, Karina, for saying you'll keep it confidential. So Karina's on the ball. You can tell she emailed me. But the reason that people become entrepreneurs isn't really to make more money, although you hope you will. And in fact, you shouldn't become an entrepreneur to make less money or even the same money, because it's such a challenging world we live in as entrepreneurs. Ask Bob if it's easy to get projects approved. It's so difficult and so challenging, and there's a lot of risk. You want to make more money. So I'm all in favor of that. Make some more money. Good. And to set your own schedule, that is completely ridiculous, to control your own time, because what it means is you're going to trade a 40-hour work week for a 70-hour work week, right? Well, you all know that. So it isn't to work less in general, and it should be to make more money, but that's not the real reason most people do it. The real reason they do it is because they feel that they can create more interesting work for themselves than other people can create for them. And that's what I found. Would I have had a chance to build 2,000 homes, dozens of office buildings and shopping plazas, found a National Hockey League team, build an arena, if I'd stay working for the government of Canada? Absolutely not. But I left that job, I think it was 1983, so a long time ago now. I was making $64,000 a year, which back then was quite a lot of money as a young engineer. And the next year I made $30,000 as an entrepreneur. So you can imagine my wife was looking at me, saying, yeah, this doesn't seem to be quite what, I signed up for. But within a few years, I was making, 30 times that or 40 times that. So, significant numbers. And then she was a little happier with me at that point. All right. So that's why we become entrepreneurs. So when one of my first projects, I had a contract to build a Costco, a Price Club. It might have been called a Price Club back then. I don't remember, but today it's called a Costco. And it's a big building, at least for Ottawa, it's a big building, probably 150,000 square feet. And I bought a site, and I wanted to, get it, the site plan approved, and there's some other approvals I needed. And I went before planning committee, and I won't say which town it was in, it doesn't really matter. And I went before the committee, and about a week before the vote was taken, I got a visit from two counselors, not together, but independently. And they came to visit me, and they said, Bruce, you're a new developer. Yes, in our town. Great. You have a project coming up in next week or so. I said, yeah, that's right. It's going to be a new Costco. And they said, my wife has a consulting business. Oh, I didn't know that. What kind of consulting? Well, the consulting business. Anybody know what the consulting business is? I didn't know. I mean, I was 28. What do I know? And quite naive, I must say. So I said, oh, well, okay. And I think you should hire her and give her $5,000. And I said, oh. And then of course I clued in what they were asking for. And so I said, well, I'll give that some thought. Thank you very much. And within another day or two, I had another. So apparently in that town, a vote cost you $5,000. You wanted a vote in favor, it cost you $5,000. I did not pay them. If you pay that kind of fee, first of all, I think it's illegal. Second of all, now they have you, right? Forever. I mean, you're now, I mean, unless you want to end up in the Crowbar Motel, that's called prison, that's not a good idea. So I didn't agree to those payments. And sure enough, I lost that that vote 3-4. So 4 were against, including these 2 counselors, and 3 were in favor. So I couldn't build the project. So when I have a bit of a temper. I think, Bob, you know that, right? You've seen me go off the deep end a little bit sometimes. I'm better now, but as a young man, wow. So, they used to call me Fireworks for a reason, right? And in high school, I used to box too. So I'm not suggesting I would beat them up, but, I was mighty mad. And so what I did was I looked for and I backed 2 opposing councillors in the next election in those 2 wards. One of my handpicked councillor selections won. I resubmitted the site plan with minor changes, and it was now approved 4-3. So that taught me a lifetime lesson. And so what I do now in the cities and towns where I'm active is I do make sure that to the extent that you can, that at least I have a good open communication with planning committee, with severance committees, with councillors and mayors. Does that make sense to everybody? So if you'd like to see that briefing I gave, it's very powerful, in my opinion, and will help you get your projects approved, because you're electing people who are not anti-development. Because if you have a council that's anti-development, trust me on this, it's going to be a really painful process getting anything approved, whether you're working in London or you're working in Idaho, Los Angeles, Toronto, wherever you might be. Okay, that's enough of that. All right, so let's get on to some other stuff here. Bear with me for a moment. I'm going to share my screen again with you guys. We have a lot to cover, so bear with me. You all get a copy of the replay. So if there's something you want to watch again, you obviously can, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get through a lot of material in this 4 months that I've got you trapped. As I said, every class will be recorded. It's only available to the class, and you can go back and have a look at it. All right, if you need to clarify something. So I think this is the slide deck I wanted to show you. Yeah. So one of the things, Jeff and Leah, who are, like I said, new to the course today, is there is one major assignment that I've asked everybody to take on. And Jeff, you can do your own project, and Leah can do another one, or you can do one together. It's up to you. All right. And I think, for example, Dan Walkna and Bob Walkna, Dan is the son and Bob is dad. They've done one each. They're going to do 2 different projects, but some are going to do it together. It's okay with me. It's double the work for me, but that's fine. It's part of the class. So your major assignment is in November. So it sounds like a long way away, but in November is you're going to present to the class a slide deck of a major case study, a project that you are either working on and want some input from me and from the class, or something that you would like to work on. All right, so this is a major assignment that I would like you to do. And there's quite a bit of work involved in putting together a proper case study. And one of the things I've sent all of you, I believe, and I'm going to put it in the chat box as well, assuming I can figure out how to do this without problems. I guess I'll have to escape from here. I apologize. What I'm going to do is I'll put in the chat box something that I'd like you guys all, if you haven't already done so, to download. And you have to copy stuff out of the chat box, because after this meeting is over, this lecture is over, the chat box disappears. And what that is it's something that I wrote, how to write a major project case study. I wrote it for you for this class. All right, so it's new to me, but it's also going to be new to you. So if you haven't downloaded it yet, please do so. And in that, I'm going to talk. I talk about all the steps that you have to take to become a development manager. A development manager is really basically the key role in any land development company. My youngest son, for example, is a project manager working for Colonnade Bridgeport, which is a major commercial developer. His next step, his next career step, is to become a development manager. And the development manager basically is there through the entire process. He or she is there from ideation, when something's just an idea, and then site selection and all the other stuff. So the development manager is like a product manager in tech. Okay, so a development manager is not a project manager. Development manager is the top person, and then other people like project managers, planners, and engineers, architects, all kinds of others, they work for him or her, right? So this position, development manager, is key. And I unfortunately have to get out of this again, because I'm going to put some more stuff in the chat box, just in case you haven't already downloaded this stuff. It's my turn to make sure that my emails are being read. And if they're not, well, you're going to get it here in class. Maybe not all the time. All right. So I wrote something a while ago now, how to become a development manager. And I wrote how to buy low, even in a hot market, because one of the tasks a development manager will do is to find, good sites, good projects, and hopefully not pay retail prices, but wholesale prices. And then the last thing is how to determine a site's HABU, highest and best use. The highest and best use, you all know, that is a fundamental planning principle widely accepted around the world today. It originated, I think, in the United Kingdom and Britain, but in Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and now in almost every country, not in a country that's run by dictators, but in countries that recognize property rights, they do understand that if you put a site to its highest and best use, that is probably going to be best, not just for you, but for the neighborhood, for the community, for the town, the city, and indeed the whole country. All right, so that's all in there now. So what I was hoping you would understand is what a development manager does. So read that. And I just highlighted a few of these tasks that go with a development manager: site acquisition and due diligence. Due diligence is examining the zoning, the soils, the environmental condition of the property, and many other aspects of it. Zoning and official plan amendment, zoning and official plan or master plan is something you should review on each site. You're obviously going to establish the highest and best use. You're going to think about not just the design of your building, but urban design, which is different, right? So let's say you have, a low-rise community where most of the buildings there are 2 stories, 3 stories, maybe 4 stories, and you decide to put a 30-story building in the middle of it. You're likely to get some pushback on that, right? So you want to give some consideration to what's around you, as opposed to just what goes into the site. That's urban design in its simplest form. You want to do some concept planning too. I do, I'm a lowly engineer, but I do an awful lot of sketching. You probably have seen some of my sketches. They're pretty primitive, but unfortunately, there's something that you have to know. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen just so you can see me a little bit better for a second. Unfortunately, and I taught 14 years of architecture. Unfortunately, you cannot rely on your architects or your planners, or in fact, anybody else, to come up with great ideas for your site and your building. You cannot. Architects most of them are most interested in pretty. And you want your buildings to be pretty. I'm not arguing against that, but you want them to function as well. And you want them to produce an ROI, a high cap rate, a high internal rate of return, so that you can make some money, but also you want to provide benefits to the community, the neighborhood, whatever. Architects are not good at that. Planners are worse. So unfortunately, people are saying, well, I'm going to hire an architect and he or she is going to have lots of great ideas. No, the animation stuff that I teach, which is how to animate a project, how to explode it off the page and do fantastic things for yourself as the developer, but also for the neighborhood, that all comes from you. Is everybody clear on that? And listen, if you guys have any questions or you want to stop me, just put something into the chat box. If I'm going too fast or there's something that comes up, let me know. Okay, so I'll go back to my sharing now. Where was I? Over here, I think. All right. So you do lots of sketching. It's up to you. And then you have to come up, and again, unfortunately, bad news, you have to come up with whatever kind of corporate organization or venture structure makes sense. Do not rely on your lawyers, your accountants, your lenders, your bankers, your mortgage brokers, nobody except you and maybe your coach to come up with proper a structure. Jake, I sent you and Paula this morning, some comments on that. You understand where I'm coming from, right? Keep it simple, yes, and make it work. All right. So it comes from you, not from your advisors. Bankers, lawyers, and accountants, they think they're businessmen and businesswomen. They are not. They're bankers, lawyers, and accountants. They don't know anything about business, and they certainly know less about real estate development. It has to be you, and I'm teaching you some of that. And then you have to build a great team. I have a lawyer that I've been working with since he was 26 years of age. He's what I call a deal-making lawyer as opposed to a deal-breaking lawyer. You've got to find an attorney that is a deal-making attorney. You've got to find a realtor who's the same, who understands investment real estate, who understands development. A residential realtor, and I'm a realtor too, a residential realtor who sells fancy houses to rich dudes is not going to be very useful to you in terms of what we're doing here. Yeah, let's see what I got here in the chat box. There are a lot of deal-breaking lawyers, says Karina, 100% Karina. And just to give you an example, the lawyer I use most of the time is Steve Shepard. He's now in his 40s. And we were closing a transaction, buying a building that had two sellers. One building had two sellers. One was the building owner, and the other was the tenant who had a lease. And we had to buy both the building and the lease, because you may not know this, but a lease actually outranks ownership. So if you have a commercial lease on a property, this happened to be a restaurant, and you buy the building, but you don't get the you don't buy the tenant out, you're stuck with that lease. So if you want to use that building for something else, which we did, you have to buy both. So there are two, and we understood that the seller of the restaurant had changed his mind. So on Friday, for some reason, this was a long weekend in the summer, when they went to close this transaction, the trust account was short. It wasn't short a lot of money, maybe it was a few $1,000s. But rather than putting it off until the following Tuesday, Steve gets out his credit card and runs it through and puts in the $2,000 or $3,000 that was missing. Everybody had left for the weekend, for the long weekend. And if he hadn't done that, we would have missed our closing date. And on that Tuesday, the deal would have failed. It would have been actually worse. We would have bought the building, but not the lease. We would have been stuck with that tenant for 7 years. That's a deal-making lawyer, right, Karina? That's a deal-making lawyer. So you need that. And what is the number one thing in life? You guys put that in the chat box. You know what I say? What's the number one thing in life? It's not love. Put it in the chat box. What is the number one thing in life? Wake up. All right. Let me see if I get the right answer here. I'm sure I will. Where's the chat box? Come on. Come on. What's the number one thing in life? Having fun? No. Crush your enemies? No. Health? Well, maybe. Happiness? No. No. Making money? No. Number one thing in life. I'll put it in the chat box. You just read that? It is the number one thing in life. Yeah, if I've been married for 37 years, and I love my wife like I met her yesterday. It took me 3 days just to get a kiss, and when she finally did give me a kiss, I kiss goodnight, one kiss goodnight, mind you. I was driving home in my hometown. I got lost. I had to pull over, calm myself down, and I thought, oh, this might be the girl for me. But love is very important, of course, but I trust her. The value of having one person in your life that always has your back is fantastic. It's fantastic. And you can't put a price on that. But all the people in my team, whether it's my attorney or anybody else, are trusted people, and they go to war with me every day, and I trust them. Right? To me, anyway, that's the most important thing in life. And everything else, the happiness, the health, the money, it flows from trust. All right, number 8 on my list is you guys are going to be experts in animation and differentiated value. We'll talk a lot more about that throughout the course. Number 9 is the functional program. As I said, architects mostly like pretty. Pretty means, and Alex is an architect here, so he can chip in here too through the chat box. But the functional program, and there's a debate in architecture, What's more important, form or function? And to an architect, often the most important thing is form, pretty. But I maintain, without a functional program that makes sense, that structure is never going to get built anyway. Doesn't matter how beautiful it is. If the functional program doesn't make sense, financial sense, and if there aren't any users that are interested in that program, you're sunk. So a functional program is very easy to do, and I do them very simply. You create a spreadsheet, and then you put down all your list of uses that you think the building could be put to, including all those animations. Just write them down. And then you estimate the number of square feet that each one is going to take. So you got all the functions, and then the area that each one is going to take up in your building. And then you estimate what the cost of the space is, because you'll be able to do that. It's a C-level budget. You'll be able to do it. Jay could do that, and Paula could do that any given afternoon. So now you've got an idea of what the cost of providing that space is, and then you have some idea of what the revenues are from each of that. And then you can actually build a spreadsheet from the functional program, so that you make sure that it isn't going to be a loser. Right. So that's part of your job as a development manager on every project you do. And on your major case study, you're going to have a spreadsheet, and it's going to be a functional program. Today, number 10 is you have to have a go green strategy. You do. It's a good political, it's good politics, but it's also can be very, very useful. And I'll give you a very simple example. Many of my home builder clients in the States and in Canada are now including in their new builds an all-off switch. Very easy to wire into your home. I have 5 kids, a wife, a mother-in-law, and a nanny when my kids were younger. So I don't know how many people were in the house at any one time, but 10 or 12, I guess, sometimes. And my kids left their computers on, their lights on, everything else. So what we had at the garage was an all-off switch. Very simple to do when you're building new. A simple thing to do. You hit that button as you leave if you're the last person in the house, and everything turns off in the house. Not your freezer, not your fridge, not your furnace, not your AC, but everything else. Bang, off you go. Otherwise, I would have had to run on 7 bedrooms and start turning stuff off. Well, we don't do stuff like that. So there's some very, very, very simple, effective go green strategies, and that's certainly one of them. And then, of course, you're going to do your first cut at your budgeting and your pro forma. You're going to do a spreadsheet, as I mentioned, starting with the functional program, and you're going to get to a point where you look at the returns and you say, this project is probably going to work. I'm going to go ahead with it. Or you're going to say, this is a fail. And one of the greatest things I can teach you is the best deals you are ever going to do in your career are the ones you don't do. So a fail at this stage is very inexpensive, right? You haven't closed on the property yet. You're still in your due diligence, your conditional period. If it fails at this stage, you say, look, either I need a price abatement, a lower price, or I need to revisit my functional program, or I'm not going to do it. Right? That's the best outcome you can have, is a fail rather than doing a project that's going to lose money. Then you have to have a financing plan, number 17 on the screen here, and financing means, how am I generating the equity? How am I generating the debt and the sub debt? Am I bringing in investors or partners? How am I doing construction financing? And I better get out of this one more time. It's just like, oh, sorry. I apologize. I didn't actually mean to do that. Let me just go back in here. I wanted to put something else in the chat box. So if you haven't already done it, I did do, you'll see it in the chat box now, I did some time ago, I show you how to properly analyze real estate investments, how to determine cap rates using a very simple, so Leah, you asked me if we're getting a copy of the slide deck. Probably not. What I would prefer to do is just provide you with the replay of this. But if you want the slide deck, I can always PDF and Dropbox it to you. So just let me know by email. But I did 2 video trainings, one how to do cap rates, and the other, which is more complicated, is how to do internal rates of return. I want you guys to know how to do an internal rate of return, and I'm going to talk more about that in this course. But anyway, those are 2 video trainings. Now, Alex, you said something here that form and function interpretation depends on the architectural school and era. Soviet block housing is functional. Yes, but you have to understand that when I talk about form and function, I want to reiterate, I did not speak against pretty. Beauty is very important. We all know that. I did not speak against that. What I'm saying is that, to me, something is beautiful if it is both functional and pretty. And branding is the #1 thing for young people today. You know, when I was teaching in Stockholm, Alex, I was teaching digital data strategy at Hyper Island a few years ago, and I really enjoyed my time in Sweden. I taught 62 of the top digital data strategists in Europe. Most of them were Swedish, but some were German, some were Russian, some were British. And the first day I go up to lecture, I say, okay, everybody, get your laptops out. And we're gonna, you're gonna need your laptops for some spreadsheets and for some, some internet surfing, whatever else. And 61 out of 62 of these young people in Stockholm had MacBook Pros, and one student did not. And I have the big Apple logo looking at me. 61 of them. I just burst out laughing. And one of the young women in the class said, "Professor, why are you laughing?" I said, "Well, I've been saying for a long time that this generation, the young generation, is the most brand conscious generation ever." And they said, "Oh, no, we're not. We're independent thinkers." And I said to the young woman, "Come on up here. Turn around, face the class. What do you see?" She said, "I don't know." I said, "Count them. How many Apple logos do you see?" And back then, those MacBook Pros in Europe were 3,500 euros. And the one student who had I don't know what you call it, just, a PC, I guess, or of some sort, it was the Russian kid. And I asked the Russian kid to come up and said, "How much did you spend on this?" He said, "I built myself, I said, "Well, how much did you spend?" "Oh, I built and then he tells me in rubles. I have no idea what a ruble's worth. So I said, "Well, how many euros would that be?" He said, "I spend maybe 400, 500 euros. So I said to the class, "Look, I know MacBook Pros are good and Apple's a good company. I have an iPhone, I like it. But is it really 7 times better? I don't think so. But the branding is better, right?" So if you want to have success, Alex is quite right. You want your brand, the beauty of your project to speak for itself. But at the same time, if the function fails and the spreadsheet fails, I don't think you're going to build many projects, and you'll probably go broke if you do. All right, let's go back. Thank you for that, Alex. Let's go back to the slide deck, if I can remember which one. Yes. All right. So we're getting through this. I put that in there. So can you see the screen okay? Am I back on number 18 here? Everybody sees it. Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Daniel. I also want you to learn how to do critical path scheduling. It's sometimes called CPM, critical path methodology. It's one of the most important parts of a project manager's workload or workflow, but it's also something the development manager has to understand. So you as an owner and as a development manager for your own projects have to know how to set up a critical path schedule. If you're building something very complicated, and these projects are, you have to do that. And I do have I do have yes, I do have a video training, which again, I'll put in the chat box in a second. And you have to learn how to do that. So I want your slide deck to have a critical path methodology. Lay it out, and you'll see how to do it if you do the video training, right? So it's really, really important. Critical path methodology was developed in World War II to control the Manhattan Project. They had a few 100,000 people working to produce an atom bomb across the States, Canada, and Britain. And I don't know, a few thousand companies, and they didn't know how to coordinate that. That's what critical path methodology is. And you may not have 100,000 or 200,000 people working on your project, but you're going to have a whole pile of people. So again, I'm going to try and put this in the chat box so you get it. All right. And critical path methodology software is really expensive. I have Microsoft Project, but it's really costly. So what I put in there is you can get free software from Project Libre. I put where you can download it. It's very good software. and it's free. It doesn't do everything that Microsoft Project does, but Project Lead, what you can do with it is you can open .mpp files. So if somebody sends you a Microsoft Project file, you can actually open it and then start to analyze it yourself. All right. I want you to learn proper leasing and sales. And we're going to turn to Daniel in a moment. So stand by, Daniel. And he's going to tell you about his condo lease, and whether it's residential leasing or commercial leasing, you know, restaurant leasing, whatever, leasing an office, industrial space, there's much more to it than most people think. All right. So most people think, well, you know, come up with a number, you sign the lease. It's much more complicated than that. And your project will fail if you don't do proper leasing. And we'll talk about that in a second. All right. So how do you do a case study? I'll just talk to this. I've already put that in the chat box, so I don't have to come back and forth here. What you're going to do is you're telling a story. I want you to think about this as a development manager. You notice I'm really just a storyteller, right? But if you're going to do your presentation in November, you're going to tell this class a story. You're going to be the hero of the story, right? I'm the hero of most of my stories, so you could be the hero of your own story. And you're going to say, look, this is what we wanted to achieve. We wanted a project of this sort. Then we picked this site, and this is why we picked it. And then you're going to talk about your functional program, and you're going to talk about your critical path scheduling, and you're going to talk about the other things that I've just gone through. But then you're also going to talk about some issues or problems that you're facing. And you're going to say, so here's the cast of characters, here's what we did, here's some of the issues and problems that we're facing. And then you stop. And then you allow the class to discuss it, right? And give you their take on how they would handle this or handle that, right? So that's how a typical case study is laid out, whether it's a Harvard case study or your case study in the home run course. And then once you've done that, once you've stopped and laid out the problems and had a good discussion, then you present the rest of your slide deck, which is the solution module. So what you decided to do. All right. And maybe that'll change because maybe the class will have some good ideas, or maybe your professor will have some good ideas, right? But that's a typical case study approach. It's really fun to read them because, you know, it's like a cliffhanger. All right. So that's what we're trying to do. Trying to make it interesting. And when I do presentations, even on very prosaic projects, I always try and throw in something, a little bit of humor. You can get a long way with a sense of humor. And also try and make the story a little bit more interesting for planning committee or committee of adjustment or land division committee, wherever I am. I try and make it a little bit more interesting. I would like you to try and have, no, when I talk about humor, I don't mean telling dirty jokes, okay? That is absolutely not on, right? We're not telling any of those kinds of things, but, you know, some kind of funny thing that you might put in there, as long as you're careful. Yeah, so I put in here a couple of things just to get you started thinking about financing at a different level, right? And financing is fundamental to what we do as real estate developers. If you don't have financing, obviously none of your projects are going to go forward. And Jessica, I expect to hear a lot from you as we go through this course because you're specializing in this financing, and I suspect that your classmates will be clients of yours as you go forward. So I put in this just an example of some kinds of financing that might help you as you go forward, not just in this class, but as you go through your career. This is probably the most important development going on in Canada's capital city, Ottawa. It's called Zibi. And it's a joint project between Dream REIT, which is a big real estate investment trust based in Toronto, and Jonathan Westeinde's Ottawa group called Windmill Developments. Windmill Developments has a fantastic reputation, local reputation, even though they have done some work in Toronto, but mostly it's Ottawa. And this is the project. It really is right downtown. It spans Quebec and Ontario. It's you can see it on the right-hand side here. It's millions of square feet of mixed use. So it's got office, it's got industrial, it's got retail, it's got housing. It's really spectacular. And it's a joint venture between these two companies. And some of you have already heard me talk about Mad River financings. You can't look up Mad River because it's just a name I gave it because the very first deal I did like this was in a ski town in the United States called Mad River. So I just call it Mad River financing, but that's what they used here. And I'll just show you how it worked. The estimated cost of this project back when they started, which is almost a decade ago, was 1.2 billion. And Windmill had a capital available of $5 million. So it means out of $5 million, they needed 1.995. I think I got that number wrong, actually, but doesn't matter. You'll get the impression. I think my numbers are wrong. I did it very early this morning. If you look at my emails, they were starting around 3:30 this morning. So I think my numbers are wrong, but you'll get the drift. So the total project cost was 1.2 billion, and Jonathan's company, the local company, had $5 million to invest. It means that they needed essentially all of the capital from their partner, which was a big real estate investment trust. But if the company, if Dream puts in almost all of the money, you would think that they would end up with 99% of the ownership, and Windmill would end up owning, 1% or even less than 1%. Right? That is a terrible structure, because if you end up owning 1% or 0.5% or 1/4% of your projects, what, you're going to do all this work for 0.5% or 1/4%? I don't think so. So that's not very interesting. This is more interesting. This is the Mad River structure here. So what I suggested to Jonathan and Dream is that Jonathan's company, Windmill, would throw in $5 million, and Dream would put in $5 million. Right, so you have $10 million in equity, and $5 million comes from Dream, and $5 million comes from Windmill. So that's easy to figure out. Now, Jonathan's company, which is much smaller, owns 50%. That's fantastic. A lot better than 1% or 1/4%. And Dream owns 50%. But wait a second, you'll say, what about the other 1.999 or whatever it is, $1.199 million? Dream loans that to the project. It's just a loan. That's the Mad River structure. I've used it to help former students of mine buy Boston pizza. So I've used it in tech companies. I've used it over and over again in real estate. That is the way to go. And these numbers are big, but don't be afraid of these numbers. It could just as easily been a $1 million project, where you as the entrepreneur have $5 grand and somebody else puts in $5 grand, you own it 50-50. Now, somebody's asking, why is that beneficial to Dream? Jessica, you asked, does Project Lead work with Chromebook? I don't know. If you Google that, I bet you Google will tell you the answer. Skynet will know. So Karina asks a very good question. And guess what, Karina? Look at the next slide. There you go. So why would Dream agree? First of all, Windmill actually discovered this project. One of Jonathan's employees in the summertime, which in Ottawa lasts about 3 days, was biking to work from his home in Chelsea, Quebec. That's quite a long way. And every time he would come across that bridge, from Quebec to Ontario, and he would see these lands that were owned by a paper company called Domtar. They were just wastelands, basically, with environmental contamination coming out of their ears. And the young man said to his boss, Jonathan, hey, somebody ought to grab those lands, clean them up. It's called a brownfield site. Clean them up and build something fantastic there. And Jonathan said, this is great. So Jonathan and this young man went to see Domtar, which is an industrial products company that had vacated the lands, and said, we'd like to buy the lands for a few tens of millions of dollars. So they negotiated an agreement of purchase and sale that was quite favorable, with excellent terms. It's kind of like, let's say it's 30 million bucks. The best terms to have would be $1 down and $1 a day for 30 million years, or however long it takes. You know what I'm saying? $1 down and $1 a year for 30 million years would be a great deal, right? But they had a very favorable deal from Domtar with a long closing and many conditions in it. So they had, Karina, they had tied it up. They had it tied up, right? They owned the site under agreement of purchase and sale. Once you have an agreement of purchase and sale, even if it had conditions in it, you are now considered an owner under agreement of purchase and sale. It's a legal framework, okay? So if Dream wanted to go around them and scoop up the land, too bad. So sad, right? You guys get that? All right. So, so that's number one. Number two, or number three, Windmill is local. Real estate is three things. It's local, local, local. You know, they always say it's location, location, location. It's local, local, local. You could go to a town and you can see a site and say, that's a fabulous site for development, but it's on the wrong side of town and you're a new in town, you don't know that. Maybe it's got problems with homelessness around it and drug taking around it and gangs around it. You buy that friggin' site and you can't build a thing on it because there's no value. You can't create value where you do not have peace and order and good government. So local knowledge is very important. Windmill had that. Windmill can get these things approved. Jonathan is kind of like me, just younger. He's very, very good at getting approvals done. Windmill will be on site every day. You know, you don't want to manage a project in Toronto or Las Vegas or you know, in Austin, Texas, from remotely. You want to be on site as often as you can be. Windmill already had credibility. They were doing other projects. And they are known as they're actually known as a green builder, which is good political cover. And they can get those condos sold, and they can get that office and industrial space and retail space leased. So there's a lot of good reasons why Dream would want to do this, I think. All right, let's move on. So this is a project that a client of mine in Idaho is looking at. And again, all of the stuff that we discussed in this class and even outside the class, when I communicate by email with you, is confidential. All right, so we share information, but we treat it with care. We don't put it on the web somewhere. So this is a project that this is, you can see there's a restaurant here on right here. If you can see my cursor moving around, Jake, can you see it okay? Yeah, thank you. And you can see inside, it's a beautiful bar, brand new. And unfortunately, the owners ran out of money, and they were building this hotel right next to this bar. This is in Kellogg, Idaho, which is a big, big resort town, right? They ran out of money and they didn't finish the hotel. Now, most people would see that and say, oh, I'm not going to buy that. You know, geez, they didn't finish it. You know, I'm nervous about that. My clients tend to be people like the students here. They're builders, they're developers, they're investors. They know what they're doing. They're not afraid to take it on. My client is probably going to buy this thing for less than $400,000. Okay, that's a 3,500 square foot restaurant and a 16-room hotel, not finished, mind you, but substantially complete. Well, not substantially complete, probably 80% complete. So not substantial completion, but close. It certainly costs a hell of a lot more than $400,000 to buy that site and start building this stuff, and take a long time. And he's a very good developer and investor, except he really doesn't know much about leasing. All right, and he you know, I mean, hey, that's why he hired me as his coach. So let's just walk through some of the alternatives here for him. One alternative is to convert the hotel, which is not finished, which in a way is a plus, to 8 one-bedroom apartments, which could be long-term rentals. They could be on Airbnb, or they could be medium-term rentals, or 16 micro apartments. And you can see on the screen on the left-hand side, if he did 8 one-bedrooms, he'd probably make about $5,600 a month on long-term rentals, which is not very much. And if he did micro apartments, he'd probably make closer to $10,000, again, on long-term rental. And I really like micro apartments. I really like micro apartments, and each one of these would be about 266 square feet, which is big enough for a micro suite or a lock-off suite, sometimes called an efficiency. And I wanted to show you one of a local project, local to Ottawa, that one of my clients did. And I mentioned it before, but I'm going to go through it one more time. And where we are putting microsuites, not just into these hotels that some of my clients are buying in Florida and in Arizona and in Idaho and elsewhere, but into just buying a bungalow. Instead of putting a 3-bedroom apartment in the basement, he put in 3 microsuites. And I'm going to show you those in a moment. And have a look at what he did with 3 microsuites in the basement, as opposed to a 3-bedroom apartment. If he had done a 3-bedroom apartment in Ottawa, he would have got about $1,800 a month for that apartment, which would give him a good cap rate of about 15 or 16%, which is very good. But if he put in 3 basement micro suites, each independent, and you'll see what they look like in a moment, he would get about $3,300 or $3,400 a month gross operating income. Net operating income would be about $26,000 or $27,000 a year. And look at the cap rate. I mean, these are insanely good. Like I don't have any projects that produce 20. Well, I might have 1 or 2, but I don't have many projects that produce these kind of returns. So here's what Ali did. His name is Ali Alili. He's a brilliant young man. And this is the basement. And I'll see if I can guide you through it. So you come in from the outside. So it's very important to have independent egress and ingress and egress to these places. So you come in around the back of the house, I think, down this stair, and you're in the basement. And this is a legal use. It's he acquired a building permit and built legal units. This is not something he faked, if you know what I mean. So you come down here, and this is common area. You turn right. There's a stacked washer and dryer here. Can you see my cursor okay, Karina? And thank you, Daniel. You turn left down the stairs, and you come into a common area, and I'll talk more about the common area in a second. You go to the left again, and here is a typical micro suite. It's got a bed here, a little work area here, a lunch counter here, a micro kitchen here, and its own bathroom. Fridge goes here. You come back into the common area, go the other side, and you've got another micro suite, lunch counter, work area, sleeping area, hanging out area, and your own bathroom. You go down here, you've got a third one. Now, why do people make so much more money from micro suites than, say, a 3-bedroom apartment? It's because people today don't really want to share. Even before the pandemic hit, people don't want to share. And so what he does is he populates this is quite close to a hospital. He has nurses and others who live there. They have their own independent space. You know, if there's leftover pizza, you're going to eat it. If there's leftover beer, you're going to drink it. If somebody needs to clean the bathroom, you know it's your turn to clean. It's you who are going to clean it. You're not having arguments. Now, you'll notice in here that he has 1, 2, 3 micro kitchens. And then in the common area, he put a 4th kitchen in. I said to him, Ali, why, when you have 3 micro suites, do you need 4 kitchens? He said, to get the building permit, he needed to have a full kitchen here with 220 service, 220 volt service. So he put it in, but it's really not necessary. It's completely useless. So I said, look, next time you do this, because he'll do more of these projects, put the main kitchen in one of the micro suites. So you'll just make one micro suite a little bit bigger, and then make this common room something more fun. Large screen TV, a foosball table, a mini ping pong table. A place where these people can hang out together and have some fun. He said, okay, I'll do that. Now, what I'd like to do is I'm going to stop sharing that screen for a moment. Is everybody okay? Does anybody want a break? Can you hang in there till 1? All right. If anybody needs a break for a couple of minutes, just let me know. We can always have a 5-minute break, but there's a lot to cover, and I'd like to make sure we get through as much as we can. So just bear with me for a minute. All right. No, I'm not there. Maybe I am. Yeah, I am in the right place. So I wanted to show you, it's phenomenal. I wanted to show you, does everybody know what a Matterport tour is? Have you ever seen a Matterport? This was new to me, and let's see, here it is. So this is a Matterport tour. I found it fantastic. Fantastic. It's a virtual walkthrough. Yeah, who said that? Oh, that's green again. Yep. Alex, you said, what is the profile of a micro suite renter versus a typical renter? So if you have a 3-bedroom apartment and you rent it to students, it's a party place. It is. And maybe you don't want that. A micro suite tenant, typically, Alex, is a young professional, a nurse, a young engineer. I've got a bunch of them. I've got a whole bunch of these, and every one of them, one is I've rented to a hairdresser, another to a lady who runs a modeling agency, another gentleman who is a young civil engineer, and another guy who works in retail. So these are professionals, and they like to have fun, but they're not turning it into a party central. And they tend to stay a lot longer. Like roommates are always arguing. All right, so let's look at this. So again, I wouldn't have, this is the common area. I definitely wouldn't have put this is a beautiful kitchen. I just would move it into one of the micro suites. All right, let's go through the door here. And we'll walk through here, and you can see this is the little, I guess, eating area, sleeping area. It's got an armoire here. Here's your, I'll go a little further. Here's your micro kitchen. Turn around, and then we'll go in the bathroom here. Oops, I don't think I did that quite right. We're in the cupboard instead. See if I can get in here. Oh, there we are. And here's another change I suggested to Ali. I don't put, in my micro suites, I do not put in bathtubs. I'll ask Daniel. Daniel, when was the last time you took a bath? Put it in the chat box. No, I mean it seriously. Or just unmute yourself. When was the last time? I mean it. When was the last time you took a bath?
Maybe 3-4 years ago, but
oh, that's pretty good. I'll tell you the last time I had a bath. My wife and I didn't have any kids, and it was quite a romantic episode. All right, so a long time. So I mean, you know, decades. Maybe we should have another bath. So anyway, so I would not do that. All right, sorry about that. Let's go back out here, and there's one in here. One micro suite. Whoops, I screwed up. Sorry about this, you guys. Oh shoot, I go out here. Okay. So I want to get into one of the micro suites. I'm not sure if it's this one. One of them is really, really sweet. I like them all, but all right, here's another one. Notice how big the windows are for a basement. Not bad. This one is really pretty cool. There's your micro kitchen. You know, it's all 110, right, Jake? This is all 110 here. And then there's your kind of, you know, sleeping area, your armoire again, and we'll go in here and have a look at the bathroom. And again, the only other change I would make here is I would not, oops, I would not put in the bathtub, but it's very nice. But it's the other one. I don't know if I might screw up, but I want to see if I can find the other one. I think that's over here. Maybe it's in this one, or that might be the door to the upstairs. No, this one I think is the one that I like the best. So here's the micro suite again, good sized windows. Micro kitchen, maybe it was the other one I like best. I don't know, but you guys get a picture. All right, enough of that. I'm giving up. So I have to tell you that, you know, I can't tell you how much I enjoy working with you all, but also working with 2,500 other people like this. I talked to Ali Alili about the stuff that I'm doing and other people are doing with micro suites or lock-off suites, whatever you want to call them. And then he goes and blows my mind and does something better, right? So what I'm hoping you guys will do is take ideas from each other and from me and from my clients, and then, you know, do us all one better. And Ali certainly did that. All right, let's go back. I want to check the chat box again. Oh, Jake says, I found a microwave for micro suites that runs on 110 but can bake as well. That is really cool. So fantastic stuff. All right, let's go back into the slide deck and let's go back to the restaurant case. All right, get rid of that. So again, Daniel, give me a thumbs up. You can see the slide deck again. Okay, thank you. So, you know, this is a beautiful, beautiful restaurant. Anyway, my young client, Ryan, is working through the due diligence on this in Kellogg, Idaho. And he writes to me, I have to learn more about commercial leasing. So far, they told me the restaurant leases for $1,300 a month. This is crazy because this is a newly remodeled 3,500 square foot building on the main road with a liquor license, LOL. But I think 5 years ago when the tenant moved in, the owner worked a sweet deal because $1,300 a month is better than empty. Right. All right. So this is what I wrote back to him. And just think about the difference it makes to your next project. That's a ridiculously low rent, Ryan. Here's what I would expect from a restaurant lease. So this is commercial leasing 101. Base rent, which is sometimes known as minimum rent or triple net rent, should be at least $16 per square foot per year. In better locations or locations with more traffic, it could be $30 a square foot. It could be almost double that. Certainly in Zibi, for example, they would be charging at least $30 a square foot for their restaurants. I mean, it's going to be a fantastic, successful project. I have no doubt about that. Then in addition, in commercial leases, not like residential leasing, they're going to pay something called additional rent. They're going to pay operating costs, their own utilities, and their share of property taxes on top of base rent. That's called additional rent. And what I'm trying to teach people to do, and I brought this concept to residential leasing too, which we'll talk about later, is to get a percentage rent, 4, 5, 6, maybe as much as 8% of volume. So as the restaurant does better, the landlord, the rental provider, does better too. So if we just go with the $16, it means instead of getting, what was it, $1,300 a month for the 3,500 square foot, the landlord would get $16 times 3,500 square feet divided by 12, $4,667 a month. Like that's almost 4 times as much. That's a huge difference. And that's on the low end. It makes a huge difference. So again, people think all I have to know is how to put the building up. No, you have to know how to make your building work. And it's not it's not assets that produce income. It's people. You could build the most beautiful, highly functional, greatest animated project, but if you don't know how to lease it or sell it, you're screwed. All right. So I want you to know this stuff. I'm going to send you all this. These are on the right-hand side. I was thinking about Ryan's situation, and I wrote how to make a restaurant more successful. I just, after I got off my treadmill, I wrote some notes. But I'll send you that rather than go through it because it will take too long. All right. But I actually know how to make restaurants successful. So here's the weird thing that I'm teaching you to do, and that is to coach and teach and mentor your tenants to be more successful. Why would you do that? Like a lot of landlords say, why would you, Bruce, you're wasting your time. You're teaching, giving, no. If I make my restaurant more successful, what happens to my rent, especially if I'm getting a percentage rent? It goes up. Even if I'm not getting a percentage rent, if they're making more money, they're much more likely to stay and to renew their lease, right? And that's a good thing. All right. And I also coach some of my residential tenants too, to help them be more successful, because if they're more successful, they'll stay longer and maybe go from a micro suite to a 1 bedroom and pay a bit more. So I'll send you that. Something else I have to get out of my presentation format. Something else I want you guys to do. I'll put it in the chat box again. Sorry to put so much in there, and it's a lot of work for you guys. But this is another video training that I did with young Tristan Peltier. He's a brilliant young man. He's a former officer in the Canadian military. And he and I spent about an hour together talking about standard residential leasing. It's much more complicated than you think. And if you have time, and I think you should make time, you should do this. It'll teach you some new things that you don't know. I'm quite sure about that. All right, so it's in your chat box now. All right, Dan, you're going to start talking to these slides. So unmute yourself. Tell us about your condo leasing experience.
All right, so people, I don't know if not everyone knows, I'm actually in Bucharest, Romania right now. So I was living in Ottawa most of my life, and before I left, I bought a condo that I decided to keep and rent out. You never know, you need an emergency place to return to, something like that, in case I wanted to come back. So I did keep it and rent it out over the years. The point is that Bruce recently sent this, one of the emails he sent out had, how to animate your condo. He considers an animation, basically, oh, you're going to itemize costs to kind of, I guess, make it more palatable for people to rent. So the point is here, the relevance to me is that I charged a rent. And when you look at rental listings, of course, in Kijiji, whatever, popular listing service, you'll see usually a flat single rate. So it didn't even occur to me to do this at the time. You might see, oh, I'm renting a place, 2,000, something 1,500. So I did a similar thing. Of course, decoupling everyone knows to decouple the utilities, especially now, inflation's out of control, Russia, whatnot, the government's conspiring against us to make energy rise, the last thing you need is to be on the hook. And as a residential rental provider, unfortunately, we're also constrained by the Bruce, do we have the spreadsheet I made as well, or is it just a sheet? Just okay to this. So okay, can we go back to the previous sheet, please? I don't know if I covered everything here. The point is, yeah, I did a foolish thing in including condo fees just at a high level to go over it. I included the condo fees in the rent I charged to the tenants, not considering that the condo fees would be outstripping inflation, and more importantly, the rental guidelines, rental increase guideline of Ontario. So let's go forward to the next slide, please. I give you this is not the usual way Bruce does. I only put down here for your benefit, and I have had tenants, the last tenant that entered in 2016, and they're good tenants. I like them, pay their rent on time, and we have a good, let's say, relationship. So I did get them in. I had a real estate guy that wasn't that great. I wasn't on site. That's the problem. I never would have let it go this low. The market was depressed. I actually I think I left in about 2012. I was getting 2000 in 2012. It was a better market. So this guy is like, didn't do a great job there negotiating. So that was mistake number one. The point is, you see monthly rent. I gave them a 2-year lease. Retrospect, bad idea. So again, the top table is my actual scenario. So yeah, we have the first 2 years, 2016, 2017, frozen rent to 1875. You'll see in 2018, I finally start increasing rent, and you'll see the line that says year-over-year rental increase. I'm basically following the Ontario rental increase guideline. So you see the percentage increase year-over-year that's there. Now you'll also see the second line item is the monthly condo fee, which I was including in the rent, stupidly. And you'll see I also have a year-over-year condo fee increase, and you'll see it's like 4%, 6%. It's higher, Bruce, if you have the cursor. I see a cursor moving around there. In any case, you'll see 4%, 6%, 3%, because in fact, the condo was trying to catch up with the reserve fund. So the point is that this was something I hadn't anticipated. And as a side note, let's say in retrospect, it's stupid, but I'll say one more thing. Until 2017, I could have in fact increased the rent more than the rental increase guideline, because in 2017, prior to April, my place was still exempted from the rental increase guideline that actually exempted any property built after, I think, some month of 1991. This was the government's attempt to promote construction of new rental units. Of course, the communistic liberals took away that constraint in 2017. So anyway, the point is, there we go. Now I'm stuck following the rental increase guideline. I can't recoup those costs. Now the bottom table is the way I should have done it. And I hope, Bruce, maybe you know, I hope I can actually legally decouple the condo fees to pass to tenants. And I'll ask additionally, is it possible to decouple the property tax from a rental lease?
So I've been through the wars on this, along with, I'm sure, a few 100,000 rental providers. And the answer is probably not. And I had to fire a property manager because I have been doing this. First of all, as you said, Daniel, it's very important in your residential leases to make sure that to the extent you can, that your tenants are paying utilities directly to the utility companies. And so if the utility company puts their prices up by 8 or 10%, that's fine. And I do the same thing. If I have a condo, I break out the condo fees, and when they go up, I just simply increase them. But I have been told by a property manager that no longer works for me that that's not permitted, and I just fired him. And I just send notices to my tenants that says the condo fees went from, in my case, they went from about $890 or $900 a month to $1,300 a month, $400 a month increase. And I just simply, as they went up, I just simply sent that on. And so, again, I can't coach people, Daniel, to do what I do, because maybe I am in breach of the Residential Tenancy Act. I'm not 100% sure about that, but frankly, I don't even want to find out. I have leases where I have done this. Now, I haven't broken out property taxes, but I've broken out utilities and condo fees and some other costs. And when they go up, I just pass them on. I don't mark them up. I just pass them on to the tenant. And so far, so good.
I will state that, of course, you are allowed increasing above guideline if the property taxes go up some excessive amount, and there's a formula for that. I have seen condo fees online that some people said they charge them separately. So I can just draw your attention to the bottom line, money lost per year. So I kind of just summarize, if I had decoupled the condo fees, and then you see that the first year, 2016, I kind of start with a baseline saying, oh, if I had split out the condo fees and charged the same amount, that's the 1875, and applied the same rental increase just to that monthly rent, now that has the condo fees decoupled. At the bottom line, you'll see in 2017, I would have made an additional 380. And then until 2022, you see, I would have made an additional 2,268. So if these guys stay a lot longer, I'm going to be having to sell that place at some point. So I'll have to see what, I don't think I'm going to stay forever. Until now, I've only had tenants staying 1 or 2 months, so I wasn't contemplating it. As I said, the 2017 was a blow because I would have been able to increase above guideline before that. And keep in mind that the NDP takes over, they've promised to basically make it such that if my tenants leave, I will have to base the next property, the next rental amount will have to be based on what the previous tenants were paying. So keep that in mind as well if those people ever take over.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I'm not a fan of the NDP because they were in government in Ontario when I was trying to get the Palladium deal approved, and they were vehemently against us building the building and having a National Hockey League team in Ottawa. They wanted the team in Hamilton, so I don't send Bob Ray Christmas cards either. So thank you very much for that, Daniel. Very, very helpful. And you know, there's lots of good lessons in this, and I'd like you to do the video training, and I just learned some new stuff from Daniel, so thank you for that. So one of the things I want to make sure you understand is that pricing is an art, not a science. It's an art. And I want to show you how pricing can make a huge difference. I ran a company called TCCL, Terrace Corporate Centers Limited. It basically was the largest provider of mini offices in Eastern Ontario. And we had, I think, 40 mini offices in the west end of Ottawa in this building, which is called the Royal Bank Pavilion, which I built in the 80s, along with this building here, which is about 120,000 square feet, called the Malorne Center. And then we also had 2 floors in our Heritage Place building downtown. This is, I don't remember, 26 stories. It's right downtown Ottawa. It's called Heritage Place. And we had floors 9 and 10, which were mini offices. Today you would call them co-working spaces. And we were in competition with a big company, Minto, and they had built a new 3 or 4 tower complex downtown Ottawa called Minto Place. So it was Terrace Corporate Centers Limited versus Bradson Business Center, which was owned by Minto. And this is what I learned. I mean, pricing is funny. And Daniel, you're on the exact right track in terms of residential rentals. When I'm doing a residential rental, I'll put it on Kijiji that, okay, the place is, you know, $1,600, and you pay the heat, you pay the electricity, you pay the water, maybe the landlord pays the heat. And, you know, I'll break it out into 2 pieces. I'll break out parking as a separate charge. So I'm not doing a bait and switch, Daniel. In other words, I'm not saying, you know, it's $1,600 and then surprising them that they have all these extras. I put it right in the ad, but I don't add them all up. All right, so I'll say $1,600 for this, and then you have to budget for heat. Sorry, you have to budget for electricity. You have to budget for water. Landlord or rental provider is paying the heat, and if you want parking, that is an additional charge, and I'll tell them what it is right in the ad. So and I learned this back when I was running these mini office business, which was a very successful business. So I would, back then, you get a furnished office ready to go. You could have it within the hour, $650 plus a facilities charge. What the hell is a facilities charge? I just made it up. You remember, in entrepreneurship, there are no rules. You remember Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid? Anybody see that film? A few people see it? Anybody? Well, Butch was the leader of the gang. And at one point, Butch is a little guy. And at one point, this huge guy in the gang says, "Butch, I got to challenge you to to fight, and the winner of this fight, it's a fight to the death, is going to, lead the gang because I'm not happy with your leadership. And so what kind of a fight? It turns out to be a knife fight. So this guy pulls out this huge, kind of Crocodile Dundee sized knife. And he says to Butch, let's have the fight. And Butch says, well, wait a second. I gotta explain the rules first. And the guy goes, rules in a knife fight? And then Butch kicks him with his cowboy boots in a very sensitive place for men. The guy falls on the ground in a lot of pain, and then Butch stomps him. And then he says to the guy, there are no rules in a knife fight. Okay, that's entrepreneurship. There are no rules. We make up our own. So I just made it up. So we charged back then, it would be much more today, but back then we charged $650 for a mini office, fully furnished, beautiful offices, and an extra $175 for a facility charge. And that include reception, mail handling, furniture, electricity, property taxes, heat, air conditioning, operating costs, access to boardroom, photocopy, and back then, the very high-tech fax machine, right? Today would be quite different. And across the street, our competition, Bradson, basically charged the same price, $825. But in our advertising, it was $650 and $175, and theirs it was $850. And I used to hear tenants from Bradson and tenants from Terrace talking to each other. And the Bradson guy, what are you paying here? Oh, I pay $650. And what do you pay over there? I pay $825. Do you understand it's like when you go buy a car, hey, you want this this BMW? It's only $40,000. Oh, I can afford that. And then you go there and they say, would you like an engine with that? Oh, yeah. You want tires. Well, that's extra, right? So you end up paying $70,000 for it. So, but we didn't do that. We don't do the bait and switch. We put it right in our ads. It's $650 for this and $175 for the facilities charge. They know exactly what it is, but we don't add them up. And it turns out they don't either. They say, well, somebody has to pay, to keep the lights on. Right. So there's a thing called truth, and it's very important to be truthful. But I learned from a very, very good litigation lawyer, there's also a thing called smart truth. And I'm going to teach you that right now. We should all be telling the smart truth. So we shouldn't be telling any lies, but we should be telling the smart truth. This is a form of smart truth, but there's a classic case of it, which is funny and also will help you remember what is smart truth. Coca-Cola, which is a big company, came out with a vending machine that would raise prices whenever it got hot. And the CEO of the company back then announced on an earnings call with a bunch of analysts that they had this new machine that they were bringing out. Somehow or other, that information leaked to the mainstream media, and people absolutely panned it. They said, look at those son of a guns, those SOBs at Coca-Cola. Just when you need a cold beverage, they raise the price. That's the truth, but it's also stupid. The smart truth is they should have said Coca-Cola has invented a soda dispensing machine that lowers the price when it's cold. Exactly the same message, but totally different vibe, right? Do you guys understand that? Totally different. So I want you guys, when you're doing projects, to think about what you're doing when you're making these presentations in front of planning committee or whatever. I want you to think about, I want to tell the smart truth. And I learned a lot about this, not only from this litigator, Scott McLean, but also from my wife, Dawn McMillan. She's very, very good at this. She does that all the time, and she's very good at it. All right, so I want to just switch gears a little bit, and we're going to touch on how to find investors, all right? Because a lot of you want to know how to finance your projects. Jake and Paula and I are talking about this. Some of you may have been on the call with Tony Marinoff and myself last weekend. And it's something that's really, really crucial to all of us, all right? And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time on it, but we're going to do a whole lecture on financing. So this is just an intro for you. So, Prof. Bruce, in as few words as possible, where do you find investors? Surprisingly easy. Investors have money, but no time. And for example, there's something like $1.7 trillion of RRSP funds available in Canada today. About 1.7 trillion. That's a lot. And in the United States, it would be many, many, many times more. They don't call them RRSPs, but 401ks would be much, much bigger. And many of those are not super happy with the returns they're getting. Every mutual fund salesman ever born says, you're going to get 6, 8, 10, 12% on your funds. And then you look at your 5-year return and it's 2%, or in my case, minus 2%. So your mortgage brokers, if you have good mortgage brokers, should be able to get you RRSP mortgage financing up to 90 or 95% loan to value. You guys clear on that? We'll talk more about it, but that's the case. So let's say you're doing a commercial project and you can only get 65. Jake, are you listening? This is for you and Paula. You can only get maybe 65% loan to value financing for commercial projects in Canada. In the United States, you can get 80% or more, maybe even 85 or 90%. But in Canada, 65%, in the United States, probably at least 80%. But still leaves you short 20% in the United States and maybe 35% in Canada. But RRSP mortgages are allowed to go up to 90 or 95% loan to value. So you close the gap that way. Okay, clear as mud. And why are investors, whether it's an RRSP loan that they're, lending money to your project, why are they doing it? Again, they have money but no time, and they're looking for entrepreneurs that they can trust. That important word that I use all the time. And they want to invest in people like you, right? So they can lend money to the project, like Dream REIT did, and they can invest money in the project too. All right, that's kind of where you find investors. And where do you find investors? Well, the first place I look is accounts payable. I mean, people you pay money to, consultants, engineers, realtors, mortgage brokers, etc. They should turn around and invest in your project. Look at your existing and past client customer base. Many of your people who bought from you or leased from you or whatever, people who've been clients of yours might also want to invest with you. Future clients and customers. You look at your trade contractors. Jake and Paula, you would know this, that the people who have the most money in our business are often the trades, the plumbers, the electricians, the HVAC people, and they often will invest with you as well. You look at your marketing partners, they might co-invest with you. Sponsors might invest with you. Organizations that want some signage on your project, you can look for partners. Does anybody know what the difference between a partner and investor is? Anybody want to have a go at that? Just unmute yourself.
I would say an investor has a stake in the property, or sorry, a partner has stake in the property. An investor gets a fixed return.
Maybe.
So it's a partner thinks they have a say in how things go.
That's
an investor.
Yeah, perfect. So Jake is saying he's on the right track there. An investor is somebody who just really wants a return on investment. They'd like an update 2, 3, 4 times a year. How's the project going? Are we making any money? Send me a check. A partner actually wants a say in the business. So I like investors, but I'm not so keen on partners. All right. So you should be asking, as I said earlier, your mortgage broker, your realtor, your accountant, your real estate lawyer, your architect, ask and develop relationships with major funders like REITs and pension funds. Private equity funds are a big source of capital for people like us, and you should learn more about that. And then once you have decided that you want to bring investors in, the easiest way to do that is to do a free webinar. I don't know how many I do, a year, but with clients I coach, I'll do a number of them. And we raise sometimes a few $100,000. And in some cases we raise, $1.2 billion as we did for Zibi. So it can range from a few $100,000 to a billion or more. Free webinars, people like that. And what I try and do is like I tried with Tony, which is try not to just make it a sales proposition, but also a learning opportunity. Like Tony has a real system to find undervalued property, which I found very interesting. And so there was a learning opportunity and a learning outcome there. And there you go. All right, so that's enough on that for now. And I wanted to go over a few other things with you before I let you go for the day. Before I start on the other slide deck that I prepared for you, are there any questions? It's 12:36. Are there any other questions from you? I'm looking at Jessica says active or passive. Yeah, I like that too. Any other questions? Are you still with me? All right, so we're almost done. Another 24 minutes and I'll let you go. All right, let me see if I can share my other slide deck. And maybe it's this one. Yeah, I think so. All right, lecture 2. All right, so I wanted, and I sent you all of this again by email. I got about half the class again answered and half that did not. And this is a question about optimization versus maximization. This is very typical of what we find in our business, in our industry, and not just in our industry, it's everywhere. Optimization means that you're taking into account the fact that time matters. If you were trying to maximize the value of every deal you do for yourself, you might be naming really high prices and you might be waiting years to get those prices. So maybe it's better, even if you take a little bit less, that you've optimized your results because you've taken into account the fact that over time, time counts, right? Time is really the only asset we really have. So this is a property here you can see on my screen, which clients of mine, young clients of mine, like they're in their mid-20s, very young guys. They bought 106 acres of rural industrial land in Ottawa, the west end of Ottawa, for $5.1 million. These guys are very successful. And this is a site that was owned by Rick Hunter of ProSlide. ProSlide is the largest water slide manufacturer in the world. And Rick was going to develop this as a water park, but he gave up on that. This is the gate to the site that you can see here. And this was where Rick Hunter was going to build his own water park. He decided against it and he put it up for sale instead. The water park that he was going to build here was called A Lot of Water. It's a riff on Ottawa. It's a terrible name. I told Rick that when he first announced it 12 or 14 years ago. I said, Rick, that's a horrible name. Nobody can spell it. But anyway, he went with it. So he was going to build this water park. You can see the kind of the site plan here. He started excavating ponds. And he started putting down gravel pads so he could develop the thing. And then he gave up. These are the clients here. This is Lucas and that's Tom. And this is us on the property, obviously, earlier this year. When is the best time to buy? Well, the answer is on the screen. Wintertime. And I can't believe I work with some really, really big developers. And you know, like if we're working in Phoenix, the best time to buy in Phoenix is summertime because they look at their summers the way the Canadians look at their winters, right? Phoenix could be 130 degrees and everybody is away. So that's a good time to buy in Phoenix. But in places like Ottawa or Toronto or Saskatoon, even Vancouver, the best time to buy is wintertime because everybody is, you know, Canadians are depressed and want to kill themselves. So this particular piece of land was over 300 days on the market. So it was well into almost a full year on the market. You know, nobody had bought it. And Lucas and I, and these are pictures I took, went on this property and we visited it and it was bloody cold. And these are just pictures I took and obviously spring was coming, but we were still gripped in a very, very cold temperature. So here's the thing that I want you guys to think about. There is a process here, which is, the process is you've got to, when you're buying a property, I want you to think about having some kind of a business model. All right. And you remember we talked about buying, for example, you know, an industrial building that was substandard, right? Why would you do that? Just to keep it vacant? That's a terrible idea. You buy it because you have a business model. Maybe it's to put micro workshops in there. In this case, they do have a business model for this property and you'll see it in a minute. So number one, which differentiates us, all of you guys are learning something that really basically almost no one else does, and maybe no one else does other than people I have coached, which is you have a business model. Most people think business models are only for tech. That is not true. There are lots of real estate business models. And then the second thing that I want you guys to be thinking about is to do pre-leasing or pre-sales even before completion. In a lot of my agreements in purchase and sale, I put right in the agreement, even before the conditions are waived, that we can do market research. Well, market research is just the best market research you can do is to pre-sell or pre-lease, right? Because it's real, all right? No one else seems to do it. So there's a whole process here. You negotiate the deal, you develop an agreement of purchase and sale, you tie it up, you do your due diligence, you do your deliveries. In other words, you get, survey, you get environmental studies, you get all the detail that you need. You come up with a business model, you do some pre-leasing or pre-sales. You obviously are thinking about your financing, you get it appraised, you do your zoning check, etc. All right. What is a business model? A business model is the engine of your business. And this was a client of mine quite a few years ago who bought this building, which was vacant and had been days on market at least 2 years. Nobody could think what to do with it, but they had a business model in mind to turn this old church into a spa called The Spa. You can see it here after it was renovated, beautifully renovated. So Alex, it was pretty, but it also had a great functional program. This was a young couple who had absolutely no money, and this made them, they've got 3 locations, including one in Jamaica, and they're worth many millions of dollars today. But this is the first deal that they did, and I helped them with it. So they had a business model. And a business model is very simple. There's your company in the middle, there's customers on one side, suppliers on the other side, and a marketing dimension up here. Customers on one side, suppliers on one side, your business in the middle, and some marketing partners up here. That's a business model. It's very simple. It's one page. You can just do a sketch of it. And one of the things I teach people to do is to go at least 2 dimensions on each side. So I asked the young couple, who are your clients? They said about 97% are female and 3% are guys. So I said, what do the clients of your clients want from your business? They said, what are you talking about, Bruce? Here's the spa and here are the clients, women. What do the clients of the clients? In other words, what do the partners of the women who are second dimension removed from your business want from the business? We know what they want from their partners, but what do they want from the business? And it turns out that it was, they wanted gift certificates. So I said to the spa, what the men want is to buy gift certificates from the spa to give to their significant others. They said, do you really think there's a market for that? This was quite a long time ago. This would have been the 80s, late 80s when I was coaching these guys. So one Christmas they did that. 6 weeks before Christmas, they introduced their first gift certificate, beautifully done. And they sold $250,000 of gift certificates in 6 weeks before Christmas. That was a very significant amount of money back then. And a year later, I got a call from Christine, who was the lady of the duo, and she was in a panic. She said, Bruce, $60,000 of those $250,000 in gift certificates have not yet been redeemed. What happens if, and back then you could put an end date on them. Today you're not allowed to do that, but back then you could. It was a 1-year date. I said, well, if somebody shows up on January 1st with a gift certificate, you've got to honor it. But what if they all come in the next 30 days? So I want you guys to put in the chat box, what percentage of that 60 grand showed up at any time to redeem their gift certificates? 0%, 10%, 50%? Put it in the chat box. And Matt says 25%. Karina, oh, Jessica, you're right. Okay, you can start. I would have thought 50% too, Alex. Turns out about 5 to 10% actually showed up. So it meant that out of every $250,000 of gift certificates that they were doing, about 50 grand ended up on the bottom line. It was free, literally free money. So I want you guys to learn how to do business models in real estate. And I'm not going to go through this, but I'm going to show you the park yards one. So the boys, when they bought this 106 acres, had this in mind. They were going to do a park yards. For those of you who understand the contractor yards model, some of you already know that. It's one of my favorite models. And in fact, if I was a young guy again, the only business I would do would be park yards or lawn yards, one of these contractor yards business. It started in Phoenix with Kyle Powell, and you've heard me talk about, some of you have heard me talk about it before. And the boys, Lucas and his brother Jacob and Tom, are going to take the 106 acres and they're going to do it a little bit differently than what Kyle started doing in Gilbert, Arizona. In Gilbert, Arizona, his typical yard is sort of 40 or 50 feet wide by maybe 100 feet deep. So it's a small yard of about 4,000 square feet where contractors can park their loaders, their dozers, their dumpers, their whatever. And they can put sea cans there, they can store their materials there. Park yards is going to go a little bit bigger. Each one of these yards will be a half an acre and will include a coverall building so that you can put your equipment out of the weather, right? So they're going to turn that 106 acres into park yards. And it says up to an acre of combined outdoor space and unheated indoor space, but most of them will be half an acre. So they closed on this transaction about 6 weeks ago, and you can sort of see now, their chalk marks on the gravel that they're doing. They're developing their park yards business as we speak. I'm going to stop sharing now just for a moment. So I just want to do some numbers with you very briefly. Okay, who's got a calculator? Dave, do you have a calculator there? Mr. Wallace? Yes, do you want to unmute yourself for a second?
Yes, sir, I got a calculator.
All right, let's do some numbers. I'll put you to work. So it's 106 acres. Multiply that by 0.7. What do you get? Unmute yourself, brother.
Sorry, a lot of things going on at the same time. 742.
So you have 106 acres and you multiply that by 0.7, you get about 74 acres, correct?
Yeah, 74.2, yeah.
So the reason I took off 30% is you need circulation space. You know, you need to have internal roadways and you probably have some well and septic stuff and other stuff that takes up about 30% of your space. So now they're left with 74. Divide that number, Dave, by 0.5. How many yards do you get?
0.05, 1,480.
I don't think so.
Sorry, 148. Sorry, 148.
148. Okay.
All right.
140. That's better, Dave. So
Yeah.
148 yards. Okay.
Yeah.
They charge. Are you guys sitting? Everybody sitting down?
Yeah.
They charge $4,500 a month for a yard. 4,500. 40. So multiply 148 by 4,500. What's the monthly income, Dave?
666,000.
Are you guys adding it up so far? Okay,
Yeah.
$666,000.
Yeah.
Multiply that by 12.
7.99992.
So almost $8 million.
Yeah.
Okay. So the gross operating income from this business when it's mature will be about $8 million a year. Multiply that now by 0.66. 8 million times 0.66.
5,274.
So so the reason I multiplied by 0.66 is that 34% of their income, this is true whether it's residential or commercial or industrial, whatever it is, sort of goes out the window. This has nothing to do with mortgages. This is just cap rate calculations. About 34% go out the window for insurance, repairs and maintenance, operating costs, property management,
Carrying costs,
vacancy, all the other stuff, Davis, there's a whole list of things, but nothing to do with the mortgage. So when you multiply that by 0.66, you got 5 million?
5.27,
So
5,274.
That's their net operating income. Now the
Yeah.
fair market value cap rate, when they get it appraised, when it's mature, will probably be about 5.5%, but let's go with 8%. So divide that by 0.08. What do you get? Dave, unmute yourself.
65,934,000.
You guys understand what I'm talking about here?
Yeah.
This business, we were a little bit more conservative. So we think the boys, they bought the land for $5.1 million. We think that it will be worth over $45 million within about 5, 6, or 7 years. That is a future shaping home run friggin' deal.
Wow.
And that is that. Now, how did we de-risk it? Okay, how did we de-risk it? In the agreement of purchase and sale, I allowed, because I did it, I represented them. I didn't represent the seller, I only represented the buyer. I actually put on my realtor hat and took off my coaching hat, but I put in there that they were allowed to do market research, and that meant advertising it for rent, which they did. I said to the boys, I said, you guys have got to sign 10 leases before we close. We had a 3-month closing. Sure enough, as we got closer to closing, I'm the coach, I'm not their boss, but I kind of held their feet to the fire because I want them to be successful, obviously. And, they were at, I think, 7 signed leases, and then they were at 8, but they hadn't reached the goal. I said, guys, you've only got another 2 weeks. So we didn't do a webinar. We actually did a presentation on the site. Again, it was pretty friggin' cold. And I was there, maybe I can't do anything else, but I can sure talk. And so we did a presentation. We had a bunch of contractors there, landscape companies, all kinds of people, and we signed up 3 more. So they actually did 11 leases in advance of completion. And if you do 11 times $4,500 a month, it works out to about $50,000 a month. And that's enough, to pay a lot of costs because they do have a mortgage on the property and they have other expenses. So you can, I can't emphasize enough as land developers, you have to have a great business model. And then you want to de-risk it. If you're building homes in Florida, like Jake and Paula are doing, you want to pre-sell those. And when you pre-sell them, Jake, I put it in, we've talked about it, I put it in an email this morning. What you want to do is you want to take a small deposit, a reservation fee, which is refundable when they think, yes, I think I might buy that house. So it might be very little, it might be $5,000. And then when you sign an agreement to purchase the sale, that deposit is going to be increased from $5,000 refundable to a non-refundable $150,000. Or it could be more, but it won't be less than 150. And then when you put your footing and foundation in, you do your excavation and backfill, you're going to get another $100,000 from them. Then when you enclose the house, you're probably going to get another $250,000. So you're going to be at $400,000 or $500,000 in deposits that come to you, and you can use that money, right? It might be more, because the one thing you don't want to experience is negative sales. Negative sales is where people welch on the deal, and you're building the damn house. If they're welching on the deal and you have $500,000 of their non-refundable money by that time, okay, you'll finish the house and sell it to somebody else, right? But if you have a measly $40,000, that's really difficult. So as developers, I want you to be thinking about all these aspects that I've gone through today, including how do you de-risk things? And there's nothing that de-risks it more than having real sales, in the case if you're a home builder in Florida, or if you're buying, park yards or land for park yards. You've de-risked it in part because you have a business model that actually friggin' makes sense. And you've de-risked it because you've done, in this case, 11 leases. Everybody clear on that? And the one thing that I have to say over and over and over again is that the key to being a successful developer, other than what I just said, is figuring out the shortest, quickest, least expensive, least risky route to revenue. And that brings me to one other subject that I'll touch on, and that will be it for the day. The question is, how do you get to revenues in a hurry in a situation like what we're dealing with here, where you're going to put some gravel down, you're going to put some fencing up, and you're going to create these contractor yards? In principle, most cities or many cities and towns require you to have a site plan or a site plan amendment simply to put a container on a site. I'm not kidding, one container. Now, if you drive through an industrial subdivision in LA, in Houston, in Toronto, whatever, in Saskatoon, and you look at these industrial buildings and you look in their yard, how many sea cans will you see there? Sometimes you'll see hundreds, sometimes even thousands, but certainly hundreds, dozens. Do you think those people have applied for a site plan to put those sea cans there? I would guess in 99.9% of the cases, the answer is no. And so with these young guys, and this again is very confidential information, I asked them, because I can't coach them to do this, and I, as a realtor, I certainly can't say it either. But I said, in many, many cases, what my clients are doing is they're graveling the site, because I've got people doing this in Arizona, California, and Edmonton and Calgary, a number of cities, quite a few, Florida, North Carolina, Texas. And what they're doing is that they'll gravel the site, they'll fence it, and they'll lease it, and they'll generate significant income. And then maybe 2 years from now, they'll go back and get a site plan agreement. Site plan agreement in a place like Ottawa costs anywhere from $120,000 to $900,000 to do by the time you do all the studies. It takes 1 or 2 years to do it, sometimes longer. I'm doing a small project, some of you have heard about before, for one of my clients. He's a vet. He's building a 5,500 square foot vet clinic. It's a structure. He obviously needs a site plan. We're now in our 3rd year and we still haven't gotten approval yet. He's now spent over $200,000. We're in our 3rd year and we're not close to getting site plan approval. Okay. For most of us, that's a recipe for disaster, right? And for these young guys, they're spending $5.1 million, half of that in cash and half of it in mortgage. So they had real cash. And, you know, should they apply for a site plan for their first 11 yards? Yes. Should they spend a few $100,000 on it? Yeah. Should they spend 1 or 2 years doing it with the city of Ottawa? Yes. Are they going to? I'll let you conclude that for yourself, right? So I can't coach that, but I can tell you that one of the things I'm planning to do is I'm planning to buy a site in Belleville where I have a number of buildings now. And I'm going to find 10 acres of industrial land, and hopefully with a industrial building already on it, but maybe vacant land. And I'm going to do a contractor yards for myself and my family because they're such a great business. And I'm kicking my own bottom that I didn't do it 6 or 7 years ago. I've been coaching all these wonderful young people to make millions of dollars. And I didn't do it for myself or my family. I'm going, what the hell? I said to my wife about a month ago, what the hell's wrong with me? So my next project is going to be a contractor yards, and I'm going to do it in Belleville because Belleville's quite an industrial town. The way I judge, you know what my market research is for this? I go around to the auto dealerships and I find out what percentage of their sales are pickup trucks, because that is the vector for contractors, right? And Belleville's percentage of pickup trucks sold and vans is unbelievable. And so I think, okay, I'm going to do one, and I'm not worried about any more market research than that. I've got a client in Edmonton doing it, and very, very successful. And he did some research. I swear to God, there's more pickup trucks in Edmonton than there are people. And I went out to visit him and looked at his site. It's a fabulous site. It's about 40 acres, so quite big. And everywhere you go, there's, you know, contractors coming out of years. It's a very, very industrial town. You know, it's the heart of oil country in Canada. So, you know, business models count and de-risking counts. But again, I can't tell you how that you should do it, but that's something that I would do. So let me see what else we've got here just before we break for the day. Anything else in the chat box? There's a few comments here. What would be Jake says, what would be the minimum size parcel? So Jake, I think what I would like to find in Belleville, and Belleville's a small town of, you know, 57,000 people. So if it'll work in, by the way, it worked in Picton as well, big time. And Picton is even smaller. It's only about 7,000 or 8,000 people. And clients of mine bought the old Picton Air Base, and they converted, there's a bunch of literally falling down sheds there. They made millions of dollars in under 3 years. So the minimum size, what I'm looking for is I'd like to find an industrial building. It could be, again, substandard, you know, ceiling heights that are, you know, 10 feet or 11 feet instead of 20 or 30 feet. And I would look for something 6,000 to 10,000 square feet of space, so I could have some income right away from workshops, et cetera. So 6,000 or 10,000 square foot industrial building that nobody else wants because nobody else has a model that works, and at least 6 acres. Okay, so the small yards are typically, you know, 50 feet by 100, so 5,000 square feet, but they also lease very well at 50 by 50, so 2,500 square feet. So it means that you could have at least 8 yards per acre, okay, of these smaller yards. And so on 6 acres, you could have 8 times 6, about 50 yards, which is plenty, right? So you can make real money with that. 10 acres is optimal. But I'd be okay with a small industrial building in 6 acres or small industrial building in 10 acres. That's what I'm looking for. All right, anything else before we go? Dave, anything else? Alex? Oh, that's a good one. Dave asks a really good question. We're 1 minute over time, but I'll answer this. So thank you, Dave. That's great. Land leasing is a whole hot topic. And Dave brings up any suggestions for raw land leasing. Well, if you think about contractor yards, that's what you're doing, right? You're dividing up your land and you're leasing it. Because really, they're, other than putting gravel and fences up, that's it. Park yards goes a little bit further. They put a coverall building, so you get the coverall building and that. But for a guy like me, I don't have the I don't have the crew to put them up. So I'll just have a contractor yard, gravel fenced. It'll have lights. It'll have a little bit of electricity. So maybe 30 amp service. So you can plug in your loader or your truck so it doesn't freeze in the winter here. So it'll have, internet, and it'll have security, and it'll have privacy fencing so that you can't see what's inside that contractor yard. So yes, I have standard land lease agreements, and there is, I can't resist, Dave. I'll say one more model, and I apologize if I'm going over time here. There's one other land lease model that I really like, and I have clients doing that as well. One of the things I like is getting free land. So what I didn't tell you about park yards is right now, remember I sent it out to you guys and I got lots of good feedback. Karina, your feedback was terrific, and I got some feedback from other people. And one of the things I wanted the boys to do, which we are doing, we just decided what to do a couple of days ago, is park yards, 106 acres. We're doing 2 severances at the front, which are cheap and fast to do. And it turns, I wanted to do 2 5-acre parcels and sell them for a bunch of money, but the boys wanted to do smaller severances. So what we did was we compromised. They're going to do 2 2-acre severances, exactly what you said, Karina. Your suggestion was 1 2-acre severance. They're going to do 2 2-acre severances right next to each other, or 2.2 acres, I think, right next to each other, and they priced them really high. And so they're going to be able to recover almost half of their 5.1 million. Think about that. So you have 106 acres, you bought it for 5.1 million. You sell like a couple little sites and you get back at least $2 million, right? So that's de-risking, right? That's another way to de-risk it. But there's one other model, Dave, that your land leasing question asked me, which is, more about land leasing. So I have a number of developers I'm working with who are having trouble finding land, whether it's in Toronto or it's in some other cities that are in demand. I've got one client in Portland. It's almost impossible to find development land. Portland's even worse than most Canadian cities in terms of allowing more development land to be released. So what we've been doing is we've been identifying shopping plazas that have acres and acres of parking, or maybe it's only an acre of park, but they have lots of parking, more than they need. And what my clients have been doing is they've been getting free land. They go to an owner. The owner might be an older person who isn't interested in being a developer, that's for sure. And they're long-term land leasing a site as part of their overall site where they can build, say, a tower. Like it could be a mixed-use tower, some commercial at grade and some apartments above. And they're buying the land on a long-term land lease. They're not putting down any money other than a deposit. They're doing long-term land leases, which could be 65 years with a 30-year option to renew, so 95 years. And then they build their towers, and then the cost of the land is paid by the tenants, right? Both commercial and residential tenants. Do you understand that, Dave?
Definitely.
It works beautifully. And I have one here that I'm doing in Ottawa for a group called the Garlic King. And the Garlic King is like, it's the biggest shawarma place in Ottawa.
Yeah,
it's in Orleans, right?
Yeah.
They have a parking lot that is vast and much, much bigger than they need. But they're older and they have no interest in being developers. So we're looking actually for a developer who will lease that part of the land and build a tower. What's cool from a developer's point of view is the land is essentially free because you're never paying, other than a deposit on the land lease, you're never paying anything for that. Your tenants will pay that out of their rent. Everybody clear on that, Dave?
Definitely.
Yeah. Jay.
I just had a question. That land that they're leasing, does it have to be severed off property, or you just like?
That is a really good question. The answer is maybe. We do not want to do a severance. So what we're going to do for the Garlic King, and in parts of the United States, rules are much more flexible. In many of the cities, much more flexible. So if you were working in the United States, the answer is you just do a land lease and build the sucker. But in Canada, any land lease over 21 years, so your maximum land lease is 21 years less 1 day. So if you had a 65-year land lease, you have to go to the Committee of Adjustment of the Land Division Committee to register the land lease and get their approval. But that's you know, I would guess, Jake, that's a 99% or that it's going to be approved. What the Land Division Committee won't care, right? So it's not really a severance. It's just you have to go because it's considered as if you had severed land because you've tied it up for, you know, potentially 95 years, right? So that is I like Land Division Committee and Committee of Adjustment. It's a cheap and cheerful process. Those committees are staffed by, you know, people who are just your peers. You know, they're just citizens. They're not politicians, which can be a good thing. And you go and you present it yourself, you're probably going to get it approved. But in the United States, in a lot of the places, certainly in Houston, in Portland as well, you can just do the long-term land lease. You register it on title, and you just go and build the sucker. And you can do your mortgage financing and everything else like that. It's land leasing is well understood by certain lenders, not all lenders, but many of them do understand it. All right. So there's all kinds of cool models that we can develop here as you know, as we go through this class for the next few months to get you some free land. Dave, last question.
Yeah, last thing. We were talking about the micro leases, and we have a perfect property coming up, and we were thinking about implementing this model. So do you have something that we could look at?
In fact, you know, I have about 200 more slides prepared for today. You know, I could actually for 4 or 5 hours, but you guys would kill me if I did that. So, so Dave, reach out to me. I absolutely have the forms that the park yards are using. Yeah. And yeah, I'd be happy. Hey, listen, forms, I got a bazillion of them. So if you're looking for residential leases, commercial leases, restaurant leases, park yards, contractor yards leases, mini storage leases, I mean, you know, yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bruce.
Leah, you asked when our next class. We're doing 2 classes a month, but I'm asking you guys again to at least respond to my emails, even if it's to say, look, I'm a little bit busy today. I can't do it. Just so I get feedback. So I'm not just working in a vacuum and talking to myself. All right. About half the class are really good at getting back to me. Daniel has got the religion in the last couple of days. So I'll be getting lots of emails from Daniel, but I want to hear from all of you. So Dave, you and Karina, reach out to me for anything you need. And please, Leah and Jeff, the same thing. And Leah and Jeff, next class we have, you're going to introduce yourselves to the group. Okay. All right, that's oh, and Alex is saying he's going to catch up. Okay, I'm counting on that, Alex. All right, see you guys.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce. Goodbye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.